Hello anime fan, welcome back to What If Animes 2.0. So in this video you gonna see, what if Naruto fell in love with Haku and awakened forbidden ice powers? This is part 1. And if you want more, then hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. So let's get in the video and do check out the author of the story. The mission to Wave Country. That was the beginning of a tale that would be told for generations, the start of a legend. However, what if that mission had ended a little differently? How much would it change? Better yet, would it be for the better or for worse? Only time would tell. The battle between Naruto, Sasuke and Zabuza's apprentice was not going well for the rookie genin. The masked missing nin was playing around with them at this point, launching senbon after senbon at the two young ninja. Sasuke, being unable to melt the mirrors and having just awakened the Sharingan, was trying his hardest to use Naruto's clones as a way of blindsiding the masked ninja. Naruto, in his typical fashion, just churned out clone after clone, hoping that it would get him somewhere. Suffice it to say, it really wasn't. However, Sasuke was doing his best in an otherwise terrible situation and was getting closer and closer with his uses of the Kaden Gokaku no Jutsu, fire style. Great Fireball Jutsu, by using the Sharingan's time-slowing capabilities to track the ninja's assaults. Having noticed this, the masked ninja made a decision. Take the bait out of play. The bait, being Naruto and his endless supply of clones, was the obvious choice for turning this battle around. Without the clones, Sasuke's leverage of the situation disappears. But instead of Naruto, Sasuke is taken down. This drives Naruto, in a fit of rage and sadness of losing his first friend, to call upon the power of his tenant, the Kyuubi. He makes quick work of the masked ninja after giving basically everyone a heart attack by releasing the malevolent chakra of the Kyuubi. After punching the masked ninja through the mirrors, Naruto goes for a finishing blow. However, something happens that he does not expect. The mask had fallen away after the blow, showing him none other than Haku, the boy he met in the woods not too long ago. This time around, however, he cannot stop his attack fully, his momentum too high and his surprise clouding his mind. So he strikes the boy with the least amount of force that he could, which knocks the boy out. He simply stares at the boy, wide-eyed. But why were you so nice that day? Naruto said quietly to himself as he tried to come to terms with what was happening. Then he begins to hear the sound of chirping birds, and looks over to see Zabuza pinned by a squad of dogs. While his teacher, Kakashi Hitaki, the copy ninja, is holding a mass of writhing electricity in his palm. This was his signature jutsu. The Reikiri, lightning cutter, your future is death, Kakashi said, before running at Zabuza and impaling his hand through his heart. Zabuza's eyes widened and he let out a cry of pain before falling silent, the dogs immediately releasing him and poofing away. That was disgusting, Naruto thought while trying not to throw up. Who could blame him? His teacher's hand was in the guy's chest. Immediately clapping was heard. All eyes turned to see Gato and his army of thugs simply looking on at the ninjas fight. Well, I guess the great demon of the mist isn't so great after all, Gato said smugly. Good, wasn't planning on paying the guy anyway. This just makes everything easier for me. At this, everyone present narrowed their eyes, except Tazuna, who looked a little worried. However, his thugs didn't get chance to attack, as a crossbow bolt landed in front of them. Everyone turned to see Inari and the villagers at the other end of the bridge, armed with whatever weapons they could find. Naruto smirked at this. Seems the kid has courage after all. Naruto then proceeded to make an army of clones while Kakashi readied himself for another fight. It was a very disappointing fight. Gato's men fought like brainless fools, expecting the first slice to end it all. This made it rather easy for the ninja, who simply knocked them all out while Kakashi killed Gato with another Reikiri, and with him gone, Wave's freedom was returned. The Konoha shinobi promptly made their way back to Tazuna's house. Sakura was able to wake up Sasuke, showing the enemy ninja had not actually killed him. They then bound said ninja in rope and took him with them. They then all had a well-deserved rest while the young blonde contemplated the events of the day. Was everything we spoke about in the woods just an act so that he could find out about my team, or was he planning on quickly getting rid of me if he had the chance? Or maybe he was sincere. These weren't the only thoughts going through the blonde's head. He was known to be a little dumb, but he wasn't a complete moron. His brain was indeed functional. So they all slept the day off, knowing that tomorrow they would have to deal with the building of the bridge again, along with having a little chat with their guest. Naruto, however, wanted this more than the rest of them for reasons they were not aware. I will figure out if he was sincere, no matter what it takes. These were his last thoughts before he nodded off to sweet, sweet sleep. The next day everyone awoke feeling a little stiff. The enemy ninja was still unconscious, so they all decided to have a nice morning before the less pleasant activity of the day began. Interrogation never was a fun job. Somewhere in Konoha a very scarred man felt the need to knock some sense into someone for reasons he didn't understand. Naruto made his way into the kitchen and saw Tsunami making breakfast and smiled. She was such a kind-hearted person, not like the Konoha population. No need to be bitter. Let's just enjoy the time we have here. He thought a little glumly. Good morning, Naruto said cheerfully, as Tsunami turned to him. Ah, good morning to you too, Naruto. How was your rest? She replied with a smile. Naruto yawned a little before answering. It was great. After all that action yesterday, it felt great to just rest, you know. He then saw his teammates at the table along with his sensei. So his thoughts returned to their prisoner, but he'd deal with that after breakfast. After a nice quiet morning, Naruto finally piped up. So Kakashi-sensei, what are we gonna do about that guy? He asked with a small frown, not liking the possibility that his new friend could have been playing him for a fool. Well, Naruto, Kakashi began, we don't really have to do anything, I suppose. He isn't technically our enemy anymore, but we need to ensure that he won't go into a rage over Zabuza's death, so we need to play this carefully. He finished with a very business-like attitude that the rookies were a bit taken aback by. Kakashi could be serious. Fair enough, sensei, he replied, while Sasuke started to grin a little. Maybe he could test some Sharingan genjutsu on their prisoner. Kakashi, Sasuke began, if we need to interrogate the guy, I want to try out my Sharingan on him. Meanwhile, Kakashi simply sighed. Sasuke couldn't just stay out of it, could he? Sasuke, simply awakening the Sharingan doesn't mean you have access to all its powers. Give yourself chance to train it a little, nay? He replied, while Sasuke simply scowled and went back to his brooding, while Sakura fawning over him. I really need to train that out of them, thought Kakashi with hidden exasperation. Naruto then turned to address Sasuke about his death, thinking it best to be honest rather than continuing their silly feud. Hey Sasuke? He said, to which Sasuke looked at him with a single brow raised. Naruto took this as a sign to continue. I'm glad you weren't killed on the bridge. We may not act it, but I do think of you as a friend, he said a little nervously. During the mission the two had seemed to become closer, but neither went as far as to mention friendship to the other. He was a little worried Sasuke would just scoff and call him a dobi, like that guy could kill me dobi, he said, to which Naruto simply lowered his head. Sasuke, however, was simply using this bravado to ease into the more unfamiliar thing he was about to be. Nice-ish, but thank you, Naruto, he said, having to grit his teeth to say Naruto instead of dobi. Naruto immediately cheered up at this. Maybe it was a sign that the day would end well. Sakura couldn't believe her eyes. She didn't hate Naruto anymore, but she was shocked Sasuke could be so nice. Hell, the guy barely spoke to either of them. Maybe they required a trial by fire to kickstart their friendship. A trial by fire she wasn't a part of. She sighed, wondering when she could get the attention of her Sasuke-kun. She would need to be there next time. Maybe she should train a little. Naruto decided to address his other teammate. So Sakura, how are you doing about this? Seeing death isn't easy. I almost threw up seeing Kakashi kill Zabuza, he said. She simply looked at him and blinked. He could speak to her without being annoying? Nah, he was probably deep in thought about seeing that boy again, since he'd told them they'd met once before. Kakashi then scolded him about not telling them, but honestly, could they blame him? The guy was so normal in the forest. Not to mention Naruto was a rookie genin. He'd hardly notice something so well hidden. Well, I'm doing okay, I guess. I don't think I'll sleep right for a while though. That was a pretty exhausting day, she said. Then she remembered something very important. Naruto, she said with a hint of fear. What was that power you used on the bridge? She said with apprehension. Naruto raised an eyebrow until he remembered what they were talking about. He was trying his hardest to come up with an excuse. Kakashi was mentally leaping at the friendly interaction of his team. Alas, all good things must come to an end, and when the Kyuubi came to attention, it was usually that time. So he needed to cut this short. How about we pay our little guest a visit, nay? He said quickly, not giving anyone chance to say no. All the genin walked with him, but Sakura made a mental note to continue this at some point. Later that day, Haku was not having a good time. No, first the blonde boy goes into a fit of rage and releases unbelievably powerful and evil red chakra and beats him outright. Then he was knocked out. He had no idea what happened to Zabuza or if he was even alive. Not to mention he was a prisoner. Who knows what they planned to do to him? Then his heart sank. What if Zabuza was dead? What could he do without his master? He was never made to do anything himself. The only serious decision he ever made was to go with Zabuza, and now that he was dead, he had no purpose. Maybe I can just get them to kill me and get it over with. He thought sadly. Though, all this time alone in the room gave him plenty of time to think about things, which made him think, do I need to die? I have freedom now, freedom to do as I wish. Can I really put that as a positive though? I've never had complete freedom, I don't know what to do. Haku thought, as his thoughts trailed back to the blonde boy he met in the forest a few days before the Battle of the Bridge, the one responsible for him being taken out of the fight. He sighed. What would Naruto think of him after he tried to kill him and his friend, the Uchiha? Haku legitimately liked the boy since he was honest and had a very positive goal, despite all the sadness and loneliness he saw in the blonde's eyes. In a way, they were the same, it seemed. His musing were finally stopped when the entirety of Team 7 entered the room with various expressions. Kakashi seemed neutral. Sakura was a little fearful of the one who could defeat her, Sasuke-kun, and Sasuke was brooding. However, it was the blonde's expression which truly made him upset. He looked betrayed, hurt by the fact that the one he spoke with so casually was actually someone who was planning to kill them. Though he couldn't help but think about the way Sasuke was spared, despite everything. This brought a little hope to his clouded mind. The silence was palpable, which Kakashi decided was enough and began to speak. So, let's talk, shall we? His only response was Haku looking up at him and inclining his head slightly. Alright then, let's start with names. My name is Kakashi Hitaki, and you are? He spoke cheerfully, despite the fact that this was, for all intents and purposes, an interrogation. My name is Haku Yuki. I am the last of the Yuki clan. He spoke with little emotion, something Kakashi could easily connect to the fact that Zabuza was dead. Well, I didn't ask about your clan status, but I'm pleased you're being so cooperative. He said, now then, since your friend Zabuza is dead, what do you intend to do? We can't actually accuse you of anything other than assault since you are neither a missing nin nor have you killed anyone. He continued in a serious voice, I don't know, Zabuza's goals were my life. I am little more than a broken tool. He said sadly, looking crestfallen, with a few tears welling up at the confirmation on his master's death. Then he began to cry. Team 7 gave him some time to calm down before continuing. Well, they would have, if Naruto wasn't there. Naruto couldn't take the way he thought of himself and decided it was his time to get involved. What do you mean just a tool? You are a ninja, a human being. If that's all that guy thought of you as, then there was no point of helping the jerk. He said with anger leaking out. Haku hearing this let out a small laugh, though it was more bitter than cheerful. That may be, but what would you do if you had only one precious person? Would you do anything to help them, to get them to achieve their dreams? That was exactly what my goal was for Zabuza-sama. He replied, again almost emotionless. Kakashi decided to butt in before Naruto threw a tantrum. Alright, well that's good and all, but we still don't know if you are safe to release. So until the bridge is complete you will be our guest, so to speak. After that you can do as you please, since you clearly were just following orders. Kakashi spoke, knowing that everything said was true by examining the conversation with his Sharingan. The other two members of Team 7 were surprisingly indifferent. Sasuke was disappointed he couldn't use his dojutsu to interrogate the guy while Sakura was silently fawning. If that is what must be done, so be it. Haku spoke with finality. Kakashi nodded at this, slightly glad the boy was so broken since it made his job here so much easier. He then untied Haku and allowed him to go and clean himself of all the filth accumulated during the fight. After a while, he emerged and went downstairs. Tazuna's family, not realizing what went on during the boy and Team 7 had a silent heart attack thinking he was going to finish what Zabuza started, but were surprised when he silently sat down and did nothing. Oh, and I mean nothing, he sat there near motionless. Like a statue. A creepy, mentally broken statue. This was the site Naruto arrived to after coming back from some light training with tree climbing, since he was trying to further hone his chakra control. Seeing Haku in this state made it easier to approach the boy, since he knew how loneliness felt. He sat down next to boy and took a few moments to compose his thought, not wanted to get upset over potentially nothing. So, he began, was any of it real? Was our conversation just a convenient lie to get away without making me see who you really were? He said softly, not really wanting the answer, but steeling himself for it when it came. Yes, it was. I could see we were the same. I saw it in your eyes, the loneliness and the pain, and it made me happy to see another who had shared those feelings, so I couldn't help but interact with you. Haku replied. Naruto let out a genuine smile at this. He was thrilled that the boy hadn't just been lying to him. That's a relief. I was afraid you were just lying to me or something. So what are you going to do when we finish the bridge? You can't exactly just wander, it's not really safe to do that. Naruto replied, never losing his smile. I still don't know. I have never really made my own decisions, Naruto. I have been following Zabuza-sama's orders to the letter my whole life since the incident, Haku said, flinching slightly at the last part. Bringing up his past was never the easiest thing for him. He had major family issues. Do you want to talk about it? Naruto replied nervously. He didn't exactly want to drive the boy away by bringing up a topic he didn't want to discuss, but his curiosity got the better of him. Haku thought about this for a second, weighing the options. I think I should talk about this, to finally let it go. He thought. Why? Yes. However, could we speak somewhere more private? This isn't easy to speak about. He said, clearly apprehensive about doing so. That's fine, Haku, let's go up into the room. Naruto replied softly. He wasn't exactly clever, but if there was one thing he understood, it was a painful past experience. Hell, he had a pretty damn good chance of beating most sob stories. Thank you, lead the way. Haku stated. Naruto nodded, leading him upstairs and into his temporary sleeping quarters. They then sat down in an uncomfortable silence while Haku mentally prepared himself for the story he was about to tell for the first time. He didn't even bother telling it to Zabuza, knowing his past meant little to the man. My Ka-san was a member of the Yuki clan, like I was. However, in Water Country the current Mizukage declared Kekkei Genkei, bloodline limits, to be impure or evil. I can't remember the specifics of why he did it, but he did. My Ka-san didn't want to be killed for something she had no control over, so she kept it hidden, never showing it to the world. After a while she met my father and settled down with him, eventually leading to my birth. He recalled happily, this was the good part of her early life, so she had no issue telling this part. My early life was very good. My Ka-san and Tu-san were nice people. We weren't rich or anything, but we could live comfortably. However, that all changed when I awoke my Kekkei Genkei. Haku said. Naruto could immediately tell where this was going and so steeled himself for the tragic end. I used my hidden powers carelessly. I wasn't even aware it was a Kekkei Genkei. At that age I knew little about the shinobi world. My Ka-san saw that and slapped me across the face, something she never did unless it was extremely serious. She yelled at me, never to use it again, but my Tu-san saw everything. He continued, barely containing his anguish, my Tu-san. He killed my Ka-san, something to do with demonic bloodlines or something. I wasn't really listening, I was far too afraid. He came at me with tears running down his face. I don't think he really wanted to do it. He was likely told by his friends that they'd report his family. So I did the only thing I could, unconsciously channeling my hidden powers and I killed everyone in the house. I had no choice. He said, no longer containing the tears. Naruto couldn't help but hug the poor boy. He noticed something though. Haku's chest did not seem like something a guy should have. Oh my god, he's a she. He exclaimed mentally. Though honestly he was cheering, glad that he wasn't hugging a guy. He could bring this up after the boy. No girl finished her story, so then. I just went away, scrounging food wherever I could and just trying to stay alive. Then when I had sat down of a bridge one day, a masked ninja came up to me. He offered me a place at his side, as a tool. That man was Zabuza-sama. From then on I simply did as he required and helped him however I could. I had a purpose. Then this all happened. Now I have nobody again. She finished crying again. Naruto couldn't help but comfort the girl. It's alright, Haku. If you want, I'll be your precious person. I'll be your friend, he replied soothingly. Haku could do little but widen her eyes. I tried to harm his friends and the bridge building. I tried to break his will within the mirrors. I did all that and he wants to be my friend? She thought, frantically trying to make sense of this. You. What, you want to be my friend? After a quick nod, she couldn't hold back her confusion. Why? She all but screamed. I've done nothing but harm your team since you got here. I attacked your friend, the Uchiha. I could have killed him, and allowed the death of your sensei and your other teammate. She said. Naruto just smiled up at her though, since she had risen to her feet in her rant. That's not true. Did Zabuza make you speak to me in the forest? Did Zabuza tell you to take non-lethal shots on Sasuke? That was all you, Haku. You are a good person with an unhappy life. She couldn't hold back the tears with these words, jumping at him and hugging him fiercely. Thank you. She repeated like a manta. Naruto was happy that she was comfortable enough around him to run her emotions like she was. Then again, the topic isn't exactly easy to speak about. You're welcome, Haku-chan, he said unconsciously. Then both he and Haku realized what she said and she jumped back with a cute eep and looked at him with a small blush while covering her mouth. What did you say? She spoke slightly nervous. She wasn't expecting such a term of affection. Wait a minute. That was the female term. She exclaimed mentally. Did he know? Her eyes widened for a moment before returning to normal. Why should I care? I have no orders to hide it anymore. She thought happily while a small smile formed. Never mind. She said, thank you again, Naruto-kun. She said somewhat nervously. She didn't know how he'd react to being called that. All fears were erased when a huge smile greeted her words and he just sat there looking in her direction. No problem, Haku-chan. He spoke cheerfully. Haku simply returned the smile and they went back downstairs, unknowing of what just began. A legendary partnership had been started. After the bridge's completion, the rest of the week went smoothly. The team, along with Haku, who was surprisingly cheery, guarded Tazuna and his men while they constructed the bridge. It wasn't really like they needed to, but it made the village feel safer having its heroes overlooking them. They had no issue guarding the bridge since it was an excuse to do nothing for the rest of the week. Naruto and the girl had gotten a little closer over the week, since due to the fact Sasuke would still brood and train while Sakura fawned and did little else. Naruto didn't really have anyone to talk to but Kakashi, and his sensei still scared him a little after the fiasco with his Reikuri. Haku and Naruto just chatted a little and got to know the other a little. The week did wonders to cure Haku's sadness over losing Zabuza. She was now aware what the man never offered her. She never felt wanted with him. But now she was beginning to understand how it felt again. Now that the bridge was done, Team 7, Haku and the villagers were standing at its end. Team 7 was preparing to return to the Leaf Village and the villagers of the town were seeing them off. There was one other matter of business left, however. Kakashi felt it necessary to sort it out as quick as possible. So Haku, what do you intend to do now? He spoke seriously, his tone commanding respect. Again, the genin gaped at their teacher not being a silly, perverted time waster. Haku sighed, she was dreading this. Before she could speak, however, Naruto spoke with a loud and happy tone. She's coming to the Leaf with us, of course. He said. Team 7 were surprised by this, but mostly by the word, she. He'd neglected to mention that little development, of course. Kakashi, coming out of his stupor, decided to clear this up. What do you mean she's coming with us? More importantly, what do you mean by she? He said. Naruto blinked multiple times before realizing he hadn't said anything and scratched the back of his head sheepishly. Oops, forgot to mention that, did I? He said, earning nods all around. And obviously I said she's coming with us because she is. Right, Haku-chan? He said. Looking at the newly discovered girl, they could all tell she was in an internal struggle. Except Naruto, being oblivious as he is. And all waited for her answer. Well. She said. What if they hate me for my Kekkei Genkei there? What if I'm treated like an outcast again? Her thoughts raged on before she composed herself and continued. Would they hate me there? She said meekly. Naruto was a little confused and decided to put his questions to rest. Why would they hate you? It isn't like you're a. Oh, he said, remembering her childhood. They wouldn't hate you Haku-chan. Konoha loves Kekkei Genkei. It would be the opposite of Mizu no Kuni, land of water, I promise. He said calmly, not needing to explain what happened to her to his team since Kakashi pieced it together immediately. Haku still looked unsure but decided nothing could come from inaction. Okay. I'll go to the Leaf Village with you, she said with a small smile. That in turn caused Naruto to smile, not going unnoticed by Kakashi. He simply decided to ask about it later though, and they went on their way. Near the Leaf Village, the travel from Wave to the Leaf Village was peaceful. Serene, even. It was mostly a silent trip, but not uncomfortable. Haku was thrilled and frightened at the same time at the prospect of living in the Leaf. Naruto was ecstatic about his new friend coming with them. Kakashi was enjoying his book. Sasuke was enjoying his brooding and Sakura was fawning over said Uchiha. All in all, it was a pretty nice trip. Near the Leaf Village, Haku decided to break the silence. So what's the village like anyways? She said calmly. Kakashi decided to answer before Naruto could get into a rant. Oh, it's a very lively village, not like the other great villages. It's always calm with a happy air around it. You'll probably love it, he said, but finished with another sentence in his mind. If the Sandame lets you in, that is. Oh, who am I kidding? Naruto will vouch for her and the Sandame can't turn Naruto down. He thought with a small chuckle. They finally arrived at the village gates and they all just waited for Haku to finish taking in the sights when Naruto said, "Welcome to the Leaf, Haku-chan. Welcome to the Leaf, Haku-chan," said the energetic blonde of the group. Haku, however, didn't really hear him, too enthralled with the sight of the village. It was nothing like Haku was used to. She had never been in a major village. It was completely alien to her. In a good way. She smiled and focused back on the group who seemed curious what her reaction would be. It's wonderful, she said, getting smiles from Team 7 and a slight grin from Sasuke, who is much too cool to smile. Then Kakashi decided to get the ball rolling since they had been standing just outside the gates for a little while now. They probably looked a little odd to passers-by. Let's actually go into the village then, shall we? He said, earning nods from the rookies and Haku. They walked into the village and went up to the reception desk, home of Kotetsu and Izumo, the eternal Chunin. Kakashi decided to sign them in. Team 7 and Junin instructor Kakashi Hitaki returning from a mission along with a guest who would like to request housing within the village. He said almost like clockwork. The genin found this a little weird. Didn't they know who they were? They were there when they left the village. Haku wasn't really paying attention to Kakashi, she was too busy trying to perceive how her life would be in the village. Oh hey Kakashi. Izumo started, before turning more professional. How did the mission go? Just the regular C rank, right? He continued, despite knowing that picking up a guest didn't usually happen on normal C ranks. Kakashi grinned under his mask. This story would probably never get old. He could already see it. All the other jonin standing there shocked while he inwardly laughs at their expressions. Well, if you call running into Zabuza Momochi and the Demon Brothers a regular C rank, then sure, he said, smiling. Izumo's jaw hit the floor with this while Kotetsu swung his head around to face them, interest newly found after his proclamation. They couldn't believe their ears. 3 genin and their jonin sensei fought the Zabuza Momochi? What? Kotetsu shouted in surprise. Why the hell would you let fresh genin fight an A- rank missing nin? He continued. Izumo just nodded, still shell-shocked, while Kakashi was trying his hardest not to laugh their reactions. The genin weren't so strongly willed, however, and broke down laughing. Well, Naruto and Sakura did. Haku let out a few giggles while Sasuke, being the killjoy he is, was simply tapping his foot, wondering why this was taking so long. Seeing that he'd had enough fun, Kakashi decided to end their little charade. Well, by the time we ran into Zabuza we were already in wave. Not to mention pulling back would have undoubtedly led to the death of our client. We didn't have any real method to contact the village for reinforcements at that point. Besides, I took care of Zabuza while my genin took on his associate. I'm not that irresponsible, he said with a pout. Izumo and Kotetsu didn't quite buy it but decided to leave it there. Whatever you say, Kakashi, Kotetsu said. Oh, who was his associate by the way? He would have to be pretty tough for Zabuza to bother taking him along. He finished. Haku's eyebrows twitched at this. Did she have to be a male to be taken seriously? She was starting to dislike Kotetsu. Kakashi smirked, knowing this would get a good reaction too. Oh, nobody special. Just that girl over there is all, he said, pointing at Haku, who was a little nervous being the center of attention. Izumo gaped while Kotetsu just raised an eyebrow. I was being serious, Kakashi, he replied. Again, Haku wasn't happy about this and decided to put his skepticism to rest. Blurring past Kakashi, Haku appeared behind Kotetsu with a senbon to his neck. He started to swear at this, having clearly annoyed the girl. A girl who spent a lot of time around Zabuza. He was so dead. Oh, I'm sorry, am I not scary enough for you? Maybe it's because my mask is gone, she said coldly, making the man sweat even more while Naruto looked a little sheepish, since he was the one who broke said mask. Izumo and the genin were rather surprised by this action while Kakashi decided to ease the tension. Alright Haku, no need to scare the man to death. We still need to see the Hokage, and I get the feeling your chances of getting into the village will severely decline if you kill one of our gatekeepers, he said seriously. Haku nodded and blurred back to Naruto's side. Nice one, he said. Haku smiled at this and went back to her thoughts. Well, if that's all, we'll be going to see the Hokage now, Kakashi said, resulting in nods from the two chunin. They then started leaving while Izumo whispered to Kotetsu. You're so lucky Kakashi was here, he said, to which Kotetsu gulped, not wanting to see what Haku could do. At the Hokage's office. Upon arriving at the Hokage tower, Haku briefly studied the building before being pulled along by a grinning Naruto. Then they saw the Hokage's secretary, who promptly ushered them in while going back to her duties. Whatever those were. They entered the room to see an elderly man with spiky white hair sat at a long ornate wooden desk. This man was the Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, the man known as the Professor. He was battling an indomitable horde of man's worst enemy. Oh yes, that's right, he was dealing with paperwork. Damn it all, it never ends, he said with obvious frustration. Then he spotted Team 7 at his door along with someone he didn't recognize and immediately went into Hokage mode. He turned to Kakashi, who immediately straightened under the old man's wizened gaze. Report, he said passively. Kakashi nodded and gave him his written report, hoping he could escape without a serious case of scolding. Alas, he was too busy thinking about this and gave the Hokage plenty of time to skim through the important details before releasing a pretty hefty dosage of ki, or killing intent, on the masked Junin. You took a genin team on what was essentially an A- ranked mission, he said angrily, making the Junin shrink under the intensity of his anger. He quickly composed himself, finding a way to pass off the blame to someone else. Or should I say, 3 other people. They requested we continue the mission Sandaime-sama. He spoke quickly while receiving glares from the young genin. Sell out, they thought. The Hokage rolled his eyes at this. Did he really think that would work? Oh, I wasn't aware these genin were in charge of the team Kakashi. Must be my mistake, he said sarcastically before sighing and continuing. Well, I suppose congratulations are in order for you 3. An A- ranked mission without dying at your age is rather remarkable, he said kindly, entering the grandfather figure mode. Hi, Hokage-sama. Thanks Gigi, said the genin, 2 of whom then looked at a certain blonde incredulously. He couldn't get away with calling the Hokage that, right? However, the man just smiled at them and continued. Well, this will be recorded as an A- rank and you will be paid accordingly. Now is there anything else? He said, looking straight at Haku. She steeled her nerves and decided to speak up. Hi Hokage-sama. I would like to request to join the village as a shinobi of the leaf, she said seriously. The Hokage raised an eyebrow at this. He did just read the report, so he was aware of who the girl was, but he was expecting her to be a prisoner or something. Kakashi really needed to detail his reports more. Oh? Why should I allow this? Have you anything to offer the village? He spoke, feigning ignorance of who she was. Haku nodded at this. She figured it would be better to be truthful. Hi. I am the last known individual with the Hayaten Kekkei Genkei. I am proficient with both my bloodline and Suiten ninjutsu. I have the bare minimum of knowledge regarding futon ninjutsu in order to use my Kekkei Genkei. I have also received training from Zabuza Momochi. she said, ending with her head down. This was the defining moment. If the man was as smart as they say, he'd know where they found her and would make a decision now. I see. He said, that is a very impressive skill set you have there. However, why should I allow you entry to the village after assisting the attempted murder of Team 7 and their client? He spoke, not revealing what he was truly feeling, though he was very experienced, so it came naturally. Haku was feeling the pressure of the situation and was starting to falter. She was about to reply when a certain blonde decided to save her the trouble. Gigi, she was just following Zabuza's orders. Without him she has no reason to do anything bad, not to mention it shows she can follow orders well if she did that without wanting to. The blonde said defensively. Haku merely looked at him with a smile. He was so kind to her despite everything. The Hokage, despite all his experience and self-control, simply couldn't stop a smile from breaking out across his weary face. Well, I'll keep that in mind, Naruto-kun, but I'd like to hear it from Haku. He said. Honestly, he'd already made his decision, but for appearance's sake he'd wait until she answered. So Haku decided to finish her argument. I was indeed loyal to Zabuza-sama, and honestly, if he was still alive I would still be your enemy. However, with him gone I have no grudge against you. In fact, I am actually quite fond of this village thus far, and Naruto-kun has become one of my precious people. She spoke seriously. She was silently cheering that she didn't stutter or let out an hint of fear. Kakashi and the Sandaime picked up on the way she referred to Naruto, along with the fact she openly admitted she thought he was precious to her. Kakashi thought this would be great teasing material in the future, while the Sandaime was happy that Naruto finally found a girl who liked him. Not that the idiot realized what was really going on, of course. Hell, even Haku didn't make the connection. Alright then. If I allow you entry as a ninja of Konoha, I have a few conditions. Do you have any issues with that? He asked, getting a quick no. In response, he continued. Firstly, you will not be able to leave the village for a month. He said, seeing no argument, he continued. Secondly, you will be joining Team 7 during their training sessions, but you will not be on their missions. He said, again seeing no argument. It was the opposite, in fact, she seemed pleased. Lastly, you will be inducted as a genin and must raise through the ranks like everyone else, understood? He finished, getting a nod and nothing else. He then smiled and got onto a more cheery topic. Then from this day forward, you Haku are a shinobi of Konoha. He said, holding out a headband. Haku smiled and was thrilled that she wouldn't be sent away. Naruto was ecstatic that she could stay and he could spend more time with her, and Kakashi and the rookies looked pleased. She was a nice girl once you got past the attempted murder. Hiruzen decided to finish this up. Now if that is all, I must request you all leave. Naruto, I will speak you soon, I'm sure. He said. They all turned to leave when the air grew cold. Oh, and Kakashi? I expect you back later for a chat about your teaching style. He said in a tone that promised either pain or a massive chewing out. He sighed and left the room. Haku. The Sandaime called, to which she turned and walked back to the man. I don't suppose you have somewhere to stay, do you? I can't exactly have you sleeping outside now, can I? He said. She blinked. Where was she going to stay? Maybe they'd give her temporary housing. No, I don't, she said neutrally. The Sandaime sighed. Arranging temporary housing was always a pain in the ass. The apartment complex owners would argue with him for ages to stop from having to give an apartment for free. Naruto, who was waiting at the door, looked up at this. You could stay with me, he blurted out without thinking. Then he blinked repeatedly, realizing what he said. Why did I say that? When she sees the state of my apartment, she'll think I'm some sort of lazy slob, he thought. The Sandaime smirked playfully. Well, Naruto-kun, while I'm sure she appreciates the offer, your apartment is not made for multiple people. I'll sort out the housing, come back in an hour or two, Haku, and I'm sure I'll have something for you, he said. Haku, who had blushed at the concept of living with Naruto, for reasons she didn't understand, settled down at this and nodded. Thank you, Hokage-sama, she said. He nodded and sent them out. Then after a few minutes he spoke, seemingly to himself, loudly. Anbu, bring me Kakashi, he shouted, making the shadows of the room flicker about before disappearing. He sighed and leaned back. I'm too old for this shit, he thought achingly. With Team 7 and Haku. Alright, my cute little genin, congratulations on your first A-ranked mission. I wasn't expecting to say this so soon, but it brings me nothing but pride to say so. he said happily with a trademarked eye smile. Team 7 smiled at this before Kakashi continued. All right, have a good rest tonight and meet me at training ground 7 in 0600. He said before the Anbu appeared and whispered something to make him pale and promptly shunshin away. Huh, I wonder what that was about. Naruto said. Sasuke rolled his eyes at this and decided to get his daily insult to the stupid blonde in. Isn't it obvious? The Anbu worked for the Hokage, and he seemed pretty mad earlier when he asked Kakashi to come back later. You're such an idiot, Dobi, he said with a smirk. Naruto was about to retort when Haku put a hand on his shoulder and shook her head. He conceded to this and simply decided to ignore the prideful Uchiha. Sakura decided to throw in her own little comment. So Sasuke-kun, you wanna go get a bite to eat or something? She said suggestively. Sasuke snorted at this, but honestly he was considering it, but not alone with Sakura. He'd end up killing himself or something. You wanna come, Dobi? He said casually. Naruto tried to think of something else he could have said, not believing Sasuke would be around anyone. When he couldn't, he let out a small, genuine smile and spoke, sure. You want to come, Haku-chan? He said cheerily. Haku smiled and nodded. She had an hour or two to waste before she had to get her apartment key anyway. The young shinobi decided to go somewhere rather familiar. Choji's favorite restaurant, Yakiniku-Q. The genin walked in to find Team Asuma were already there. They were waved over by Asuma when he spotted them, so they decided they may as well join the group. Hey guys, said Choji Akamichi, the big-boned member of Team Asuma. Oh, it's you guys. How troublesome, said Shikamaru Nara, the lazy strategist of Team Asuma. Sasuke-kun, said Ino Yamanaka, the blonde fangirl of said team. Well, if it isn't Kakashi's team. You guys just come back from a mission? Asked Asuma Sarutobi, son of the Hokage. He heard they had gone on a C-ranked escort mission to Wave. Something about a bridge. Yeah, it was an escort mission, Sasuke said dryly, not wanting to allow Naruto the opportunity to give a very detailed recollection of the mission. Asuma raised an eyebrow at the blunt answer before continuing. Anything interesting happen? He said, knowing that Kakashi was in some sort of trouble from some Anbu that walked in earlier who he'd briefly overheard saying the Hokage was ranting on a masked, gravity-defying gray-haired Junin. This time Sasuke couldn't stop the exuberant blonde. You bet your ass something interesting happened. We ran into Zabuza Momochi, he said loudly. At this, every shinobi in the restaurant dropped dead silent. Asuma was in a state of shock while his team was a little confused as to why that got such a large reaction out of their usually rather laid-back sensei. Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the mist. A ranked missing nin? He said, unable to hold back his surprise and skepticism. His team's eyes widened at this. Naruto's team took on an A- ranked missing nin? The one and only? He said. Asuma blinked. And? He said. What do you mean? Naruto replied with confusion plastered across his face. Asuma sighed, remembering who he was dealing with. I mean, what happened? Did you beat him? Did your mission succeed or fail? You know, that kind of thing, he said. Sasuke sighed, tired of Naruto's long-ass stories, and the fact that he was starving wasn't helping. Long story short, we ran into the demon brothers, beat them, and then Zabuza showed up and got beaten by Kakashi. Then Haku here, he pointed at the girl, who was working with Zabuza at the time, saved his ass. He said, earning stares from all around to center on the girl. She shrunk slightly under their gazes before she finished the story. After I saved Zabuza-sama, he took a week to recover. Then when we attacked again, I was beaten by Naruto-kun and Kakashi killed Zabuza-sama, she said sadly. Then, seeing as I had nowhere to go and was no longer their enemy, I came here to the Leaf. She concluded. The Hokage just let you in? Said Shikamaru, earning a shake of the head from Haku. He took this as a sign that she was going to clear up the situation. The Hokage made me explain to him my reasons for coming here, my skill set and my loyalties. He concluded that I was safe to allow in the village under a few conditions, she said, earning a nod from Shikamaru. If the Hokage trusted the girl, he had no arguments. Sasuke, tiring of this conversation, decided to end it. If we're done, I am rather hungry, he said with barely hidden irritation. Ino decided to try to woo him. She didn't quite get the message during their academy days. Oh tilde Sasuke-kun, you can share with me if you want, she said, tapping the free seat to her side. Sasuke simply rolled his eyes and sat next to Naruto, who had an end seat next to him. The idiot was the only person he could remotely stand, which was weird considering how loud the guy was. Oh, by the way, I'm Shikamaru Nara. The loud blonde girl is Ino Yamanaka and the guy at my right is Choji Akamichi. Shikamaru said to Haku, who smiled somewhat nervously and replied, "It's a pleasure to meet you all. My name is Haku Yuki," she said, immediately drawing the attention of the Junin at the table. Yuki? As in the Yuki clan? Asuma asked, intrigued at the concept of the leaf gaining a new clan. With a Kekkei Genkai no less. Kekkei Genkai were game changers by nature, always an ace on the battlefield. Yes. I am the last known member of my clan. Zabuza-sama took me in at a young age and I've been traveling with him since then, she said glumly. Asuma looked at her sadly, knowing she was upset about this. Well, looks like you and Sasuke have plenty to talk about, muttered Shikamaru, though nobody heard him. Enough with all that, time to eat, Choji remarked loudly. The dinner was going nicely, everyone was having a good time. Sakura and Ino were obviously butting heads over Sasuke while he was being unsociable, but besides that everyone was chatting. Though Haku didn't have much experience with people and mainly chatted with Naruto, Ino had been mostly ignoring said girl in her little feud with Sakura, but eventually remembered she was there and decided to speak with her. So, Haku was it? She asked, receiving a nod. Are you interested in anyone? She asked. Haku didn't quite catch her drift, again not having a great deal of interaction with other people during her time with Zabuza. What do you mean, Ino? Ino blinked at this. What? You know, do you like any guys? Maybe Sasuke-kun. I mean, I wouldn't blame you, just look at him, she said, raising an eyebrow playfully and glancing at him. Haku thought about this for a second before a certain blonde entered her mind. She blushed at this, still not really understanding why she was reacting like this. She had been around people, she didn't reveal her true gender to any of them, but she had been around plenty of people, so why was she reacting like this when she thought of the blonde? It must have been because he was precious to her. Yeah, that was it. I don't believe I have any interests at the moment, Ino, she said, making the girl sigh before going back to what she was doing. Haku, however, was still contemplating the question. She would have to properly think this over later. The dinner went by smoothly from this point on, both teams exchanging embarrassing tales of crappy D-rank missions that they'd been on since they graduated the academy and things that they had learned. When it came to what they had been taught by their Junin sensei, things began to get interesting again. So, what did you guys learn from Kakashi sensei? Asked Choji. Well, we've done teamwork exercises and the tree climbing exercise, and that's it, Naruto said regrettably. Asuma immediately cut in here, not believing his ears. You're joking? That's all he's taught you since you left the academy? He asked, receiving nods from Team 7. That's horrible, you're supposed to be taught physical conditioning and personal taijutsu styles right out of the academy. How could Kakashi let you go on a C-rank mission with nothing but tree climbing? He spoke, a little angry at his fellow elite Jonin. Actually, we learned that on the mission, Naruto corrected. Asuma's jaw dropped at this. What was Kakashi thinking? Was he trying to get these kids killed? Well, I bet my dad is gonna have fun with your sensei if that comes up, he said, sighing. He was going to have such a headache after all this. With all that cleared up, the dinner finally ended and everyone went on their way. Team Asuma went on their merry way while Team 7 decided to say good night to one another. See you guys tomorrows. I'll go with Haku to see Gigi, said Naruto with a grin. The other genin still couldn't believe how he spoke about the Hokage, the strongest person in the village, but they resolved to question it another time. Yeah, see you Dobi, Sakura, Haku, Sasuke said before walking off. Sakura looked his way before speaking quickly to the other two. CYA Naruto, CYA Haku, she said before running after Sasuke and shouting, Sasuke-kun, wait, I'll walk with you. Sasuke started running at this while Naruto and Haku sweat dropped before walking toward the Hokage tower. So Haku, Naruto started, getting the girl's attention. What do you think about Konoha so far? Do you like it? He said with a somewhat neutral expression. He hoped she liked it here. She smiled at him warmly. Yes, it's lovely. I can tell that I'll be happy here. Maybe one day I can restart my clan here, She mused absently before looking at Naruto and blushing a deep crimson. Naruto raised an eyebrow at this. Girls are weird, first Hinata and now Haku. I'm sure they're fine. He thought to himself as they continued in silence. However, soon the innocence of the situation would be ruined. As they were walking through the market district, Haku noticed people were avoiding them and starting. She focused her senses and was shocked by what she heard. Look, there's the demon brat. Why is he even still here? The village would be better without him. Why can't he just disappear? All these things and more were being whispered in their direction, and she looked at Naruto. What she saw nearly broke her heart. While his expression still seemed normal, his eyes were showing that he was in turmoil. His heart was being shattered as he just walked and did nothing to protect himself. She couldn't contain her anger and dragged him into a nearby alley so that she could get away from the stares, glares and hateful comments. Naruto-kun. What the hell was that about? She all but shouted. Why are they being so cruel to you? He sighed and lowered his head. I can't tell you, Haku-chan. I don't want you to hate me. He spoke with rare sadness in his voice. Haku actually seemed to get more angry at this. Why would I hate you? Do you not trust me to believe in you? Do you think I'm some horrible person who would just toss you aside for the smallest of things? She said. No, he answered quickly. But it's a pretty big deal and I don't want it to come between us. He said. Is it your fault? She said. Well, no, but. He said. Did you ask for whatever it is? No, it's just, have you ever done anything against this village? Well, I did a lot of pranks. Then as far as I'm concerned, you are as much a victim as I was as a child. She spoke confidently. Really? He said softly. Would she really not care? Would she accept me? No, she thinks she will. But once she find out what it is, she'll just be scared of me and avoid me. Yes, Naruto-kun. I really do, she said comfortingly, grabbing his hand and smiling at him. Well, could you give me some time to think about it, please? He said. Of course, Naruto-kun, but you will tell me, understood? She said playfully. Naruto regained his smile at his and looked right at her. Yes, ma'am. He said exuberantly. Good. She concluded. They left the alley and resumed their walk to the Hokage Tower, though this time they decided to walk a little faster to avoid as many people as they could. Naruto was still hurt by the comments and stares, but he seemed happier after their talk. Maybe she won't care. Maybe she'll accept me, he thought with a smile. It made him wonder though, why did her friendship matter so much so him? The idea of her leaving him made him physically sick. He'd figure out in future, he thought to himself. Back at the Hokage Tower, while Haku and Naruto were about to walk into the Hokage office, Kakashi emerged from the office looking like he'd just figured out his books were burned. He looked at them before lowering his head and shuffling slowly back home. The question is, why not Shunshin? Why do ninja walk anywhere? Naruto was cut out of his musings by Haku waving in front of his face. He blinked quickly before smiling and following her inside the office. Upon entering, the Hokage looked rather angry before resettling his face into a neutral expression upon seeing them. Ah, Haku-chan, Naruto-kun, he said while raising from his desk and walking around to them. Here's the key to your apartment. It's in the west district of the village in a blue-painted apartment complex, 3rd floor, room 56. He said, handing her a key. She smiled at the elder Kage before giving him a quick thank you. Now, as I said, you'll be with Team 7 for the next month, but you won't be doing missions during this time. As such, you will receive an allowance from myself until you are free to do missions. It should cover your daily expenses. If you need anything, I'm here most of the time, he said with a grandfatherly smile. Thank you, Hokage-sama, you are very generous, she said professionally, to which Naruto shook his head. Why did everyone act so professional around him? He was just an old closet pervert. Now then, I'll get back to my. He looked at his desk where the paperwork pile had seemingly grown since he stood up. Paperwork, he said through clenched teeth. Haku let out a small giggle at this, to which Naruto raised an eyebrow at. This caused her to blush and turn away. Seems Naruto has quite the effect on our newest kunoichi. Interesting. The elderly Hokage mused. Still, he needs to wear something a little more desirable if he really wants to get any positive attention. He thought, slightly irritated. Naruto's outfit was, in a word, disgusting. It was an eyesore in all meanings of the word. Hi, Hokage-sama, sure think Gigi. They replied, before turning and walking out the door. I really should be a little more concerned about letting him call me that in public. It's not like I really care, I like that little knucklehead. He thought before going back to his paperwork, which has again seemed to multiply. Where's this all coming from? He said before looking at Minato's portrait. How did you do it? He shouted, making all the shadows in the room groan and sweat drop. Hey, I don't pay you to judge me. He said before grumbling about stupid blonde geniuses and going back to work. At Haku's apartment, after about 10 to 15 minutes of searching, they managed to find Haku's new apartment. It was nice enough, with a kitchen, bathroom, living room and a free room for personal use. It was pretty spacious, at least compared to Naruto's apartment, and had already been furnished well enough. The wallpaper is a cyan blue with the occasion ripple pattern in yellow. There was a table in the middle of the room with some coasters and a flower pot with a few lilies in the middle of the table. There was a bookshelf with a couple of books about chakra control exercises and the history of the shinobi world and the Leaf Village in specific. There are a few basic wooden seats around the table and some painting on the wall showing the Leaf Village and other noteworthy places. There was also a porch with a double-windowed door facing towards the village. The bedroom had a wardrobe, with some kunoichi-suited clothing in there, a chest of drawers, a single bed with a flower-patterned blanket. There was also a chest under the bed for item storage along with a bedside table. There was a window above the bed showing the garden behind the apartment complex. The kitchen had everything you'd expect, an oven, fridge, freezer, a sink, etc. It had a counter for preparing meals along with some cupboards for food storage. It had 2 windows on one side of the room showing the Leaf Village in its full glory and one on the right showing the forest outside the leaf. All in all, it was a pretty nice place. This is a really nice place, Haku-chan. Maybe I should ask for a temporary house. He said offhandedly. He'd forgotten that she'd seen the way he was treated and so she knew what he meant with little effort. What's your apartment like? Is it bad? She asked, a little afraid for the answer. Naruto inwardly cursed for bringing the topic up. He sighed and continued. It's not awful, but it's not great either. It's livable, I guess. He said casually, obviously having come to terms with his conditions. All right then. She said sadly. I guess I should be going then. See you tomorrow, Haku-chan. He said with a smile, waiting for her answer before turning to leave. I guess so, see you at training, Naruto-kun. She said, giving him a small hug, not finding it weird in the slightest. He smiled and walked out. She went through some of her books for the next hour or so before she found a book that interested her. She found a book labeled, The Rise and Fall of Uzushiogakure. After reading through the whole thing, she had one thought on her mind. Uzumaki clan? With Naruto at his apartment, Naruto lay on his bed and let out a huge sigh. The day had been quite long, and not to mention Haku figuring out about his treatment already. He decided to ignore it and walked to his kitchen but found something interesting. A message and what looked like a slip of paper. Hey Naruto, I got a bit of advice from the Hokage about the way I trained you, so I got you this. It's called chakra paper. If you channel your chakra into it, one of 5 things will happen depending on your elemental nature affinity. Your affinity determines what elements you will be best at using. If you have a fire affinity, the paper will ignite and turn to ash. If you have a wind affinity, the paper will split in 2. If you have a lightning affinity, the paper will wrinkle. If you have an earth affinity, the paper will turn to stone and crumble away, and if you have a water affinity, the paper will become wet or damp. From Kakashi, see you tomorrow at 6 a.m. Huh, that's cool. He said and picked up the chakra paper. He channeled chakra into it for a few seconds before it split in 2. However, it was what happened next that confused him. Instead of crumbling away, it turned to stone and began to sparkle in small places. What could it mean? Thanks for watching, guys.